So in this week in the process of the BFA, well, I think I stopped last time with nonverbal communication. So let me explain what my process has been so far since the beginning of the year. So BFA notebook has had all of the ideas in it, which I explained last time. Most were bad, some were okay, but usually ideas change, and I expect my ideas to change a billion times before I even start shooting, so that I have to do pre-production like this and that I have to force myself to think about all of this is actually really good. Otherwise I just wouldn't, my brain is just so all over the place that it wouldn't ever get done. So while I'm going through the BFA class and going through all the official channels of things that I have to do, and paperwork that I have to fill out, presentations that I have to give, proposals that I have to do in order to, before I can even start production. While we're doing that, the official BFA stuff, we're all in the same narrative production class, which is aimed to help us come up with a narrative and to see it through to the end for our BFA, which is great because otherwise I wouldn't have any idea what I'm doing trying to build a story on my own. I mean, I do. This helps. No, first we were to come up with taglines in our BFA class for what we think our project would be about. We came up with taglines, then we came up with haikus about what we think our project might be about. And at that point I was dealing with nonverbal communication and with communication through video and sound. Because basically I want to do a silent narrative. Silent, meaning it communicates through the music as opposed to through dialogue. Because I'm a musician. And I want to be able to communicate through music the same way I communicate through storytelling. So then what we did in narrative production is we were to go out and research 5 different masters of whatever particular method of storytelling we chose. So I chose 5 writers. We were to imitate their style after we wrote one of our own stories. So I wrote a story about a girl who is essentially talking to her alter ego, her alcoholic alter ego in a bar. And then when I copied Neil Gaiman's style, I turned everybody into aliens. I think I may have missed the point of that exercise because that's not really the way he writes. He doesn't always turn people into aliens. Duh. I get the point because we're supposed to copy masters and we're supposed to learn from other people. So then I started watching lots and lots and lots of movies and lots of experimental, well, not really experimental films, but like independent and European films and stuff like that. I started with nonverbal communication as a subject, and I realized this later because I wanted to talk about it. It had a personal meaning to me. But anyways, that's where that came from. And then I realized after doing the next step for me after watching a lot of movies was to start to do video sketches, which was to start to do video exercises and to figure out if I were to shoot a conversation between 2 people, how would I shoot it? And how would I have them act? And how would I convey this idea of nonverbal communication, but what are they talking about, kind of thing. So I did that with my 2 roommates. Realized that I found nonverbal communication actually would be pretty boring because it was mostly about people talking to each other, which I guess once you get into it could be kind of interesting from a really simple artistic level of exploring communication and the way that people move and the images on the screen and the blah blah blah. Insert mumbo jumbo art student speak here. I can't stand Woody Allen movies for that exact purpose. So I would rather not do that to my audience, which means I would rather have action. Basically. When I don't mean action like gunfights and red fires and explosions, but I would like to have something better than just 2 people talking to each other. Oh, hi, how was your day? It was okay, I guess. What'd you do today? I found this head of lettuce in the street. And you brought it home with you? Oh, it was better than that dead bird that you brought home the other week. You shut the fuck up about my bird, okay? It sat in our freezer for 3 months before you even fucking did anything with it. I still don't understand why it's there. Anyways, the point is that, I don't want to have that going on between people because no, okay? Because I don't want to do it. So, which means I have to come up with an alternative story. So I realized I hated that, threw it out the window, and then came to the realization that all the movies that I was watching had certain things to do with nonlinear storytelling, basically. Non-linear editing and non-linear progression of events in order to tell a story, which in some ways really mirrors real life. because things don't always happen A, B, C, D. Sometimes it's like A affects Q, which affects B, which affects Z, but also affects F at the same time, which then goes back to affect A in a roundabout way, and then you realize this 20 years later and you're like, wow, that blew my mind, and that's where that came from. But the point is that I want to work in that somehow in my narrative, and I want to work with the idea of time as a narrative function, because I think it could be interesting to play with. Beyond just oh, they woke up from a dream the entire time. They were dreaming about it the entire time. This was just a fantasy, blah, 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 that kind of thing. Your standard Donnie Darko, oh shit, it happened in the blink of an eye while he was being crushed to death by an airplane motor. Okay, great. I just wasted 2 hours watching this movie that didn't actually happen. So, I want to do something like that, but I also want to play with it. So I'm trying to come up with stories about that now. So I went and showed the last me video vomiting at a camera to Megan last week, and I was explaining my process, similar as this. She suggested that I continue talking like this, and I continue explaining my process, and maybe I make my BFA about the process of coming up with ideas. What starts an idea? How do you get an idea in your head? How do you go from idea to execution? How do you go from something as abstract inside your head? How do you go from an idea to an action? And how do you decide you're going to get through that action? Lots of trial and error so far. This is part of it. I realized that Megan had handed me a DVD that actually had to do with this idea of the process and this idea of creating as a director, writer, producer, filmmaker. Anyways, the movie's called 8½, and she handed it to me, and I realize now that it was about the process of processing, of coming up with this ideas and executing it. Because 8½is about a director who was trying to create a movie, was trying to start a movie, and just could not come up with ideas. So he ended up making it about himself. No, literally, like, this Fellini guy actually put an actor in the director position and then filmed him going around until they actually made a movie out of that movie. So I may end up doing something like that, but that means I have to reintroduce dialogue into my film, which I think I'm okay with. Because the more I'm trying to write things with no dialogue, the more confusing it gets, and perhaps I'm just not ready at this point in my creative trajectory to create a silent film. And I will continue word vomiting like this, and maybe, oh god, what if I turn it into a reality show where like it's me talking to the camera and like answering questions the whole time. What did you do in your film this week? Well, today I checked out a camera and then sat and stared at it for a while trying to come up with ideas for what I can go shoot. I prefer not planning ahead. Seat of the pants is kind of my thing. Genius only happens when it has to. Yeah, so I don't know, I can't really do that with my BFA though, because this is kind of a big fucking deal. Makes me sound like I haven't really done a whole lot, but it's all been thinking, it's all been processing, and it's all been